All right, hello everybody. I'm meteorologist Greg D here for a very special hangout. It is a Wednesday now, April the 30th, about 3:30 in the afternoon here, 2014, and I'm joined by a special group of gentlemen this morning who spent some time on Sunday night traveling around central Arkansas chasing what was and could be a historic tornado for this area, the Mayflower Vilonia tornado. I'm joined by Omar Wilson as well as Tyler Sorrells, is it Tyler? Pronounce your last name.
It's actually the first person to say it correctly.
All right, and Thomas Rea, right? Thomas Rea. All right, Thomas.
Right.
They spent some time chasing that tornado, so we're kind of going to ask them what they experienced. And I guess I don't really have a starting point, but maybe we should kind of start with your backgrounds. Omar, how did you get into chasing?
Well, I got into chasing about, I'd say, maybe 15 years ago. When I was about 5 years old, I got hit by a tornado, and I booked a tornado chasing tour. And since then, I've just been chasing since. I got out back in 2008, solo chasing, and I've just been storm chasing since.
All right, and then Tyler and Thomas, tell me your stories. How did you guys get into this?
Right. Originally, I used to be deathly afraid of lightning. I would hate it. I hated thunderstorms. We lived in North Dakota, got hit by one of the smaller tornadoes. Ended up moving to Alaska, where there's pretty much nothing except for earthquakes, and you really can't chase those. But ended up moving back down to Louisiana, and it was pretty much every month we had something coming through, and I started getting a passion for it, and I spent the last 10 years in Georgia being stationed there, and I started spotting, and then I started chasing, and now I'm here.
I guess it brings it up to me.
Yeah.
I guess my interest for severe weather, as far as it goes, probably goes all the way back to when I was a young child growing up in North Little Rock in the Park Hill area. I remember taking cover from a tornado then, just 2 weeks later, being out in Wynne, Arkansas with my family and actually seeing one. For me, I started off as a spotter around 95, got out of high school, started actually pursuing it. And for me, it's been kind of a development, a progression, if you will. It ties in with what I do with search and rescue, so it's kind of a one-to-one ratio. Same mission, just different area and interest. The goal is still the same, provide information. So,
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, so you all have a background. I'll tell you my background. Honestly, I have some chasing experience, but unfortunately in bad parts of the country. I went to school for meteorology at Florida State in northern Florida, and that is probably even worse to chase in than here in Arkansas. It is nothing but a solid wall of gigantic pine trees everywhere with no visibility, and thunderstorm bases so low that they seem to scrape the tops of the pine trees sometimes, so seeing any kind of a storm, and we did get some, was often very difficult. I did spend some time trying to chase there. It was I had a couple of close calls as a college student. You tend to do that when you get excited and then decided that maybe that wasn't a good idea there. Unfortunately, I don't get the chance to chase as much as you guys because I'm always the one tracking things on radar, and often I'm the one that everyone is listening to when you are chasing those storms, when you're looking at them. So let's talk about Sunday night because this happened really fast. I was watching the storm in Garland County. It was a group of storms there that had kind of just been developing and popping up around the area, the Ouachita's especially. This one lead storm, good inflow from the south, a lot of moist air to its south, really started to intensify in western Saline County. And then as across the county border, I mean, it went from no warning to a tornado on the ground, it seemed like, within a matter of minutes. Omar, tell me, how were you watching this thing? When did you decide, okay, this is the one I'm going to go after?
Well, that decision actually didn't come until later on. I went to Hot Springs, and I was sitting in Hot Springs, and basically I'm just looking at this big blob of storms, and there were other storms forming out near Haskell. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to dump this and just move towards those more fresh sales out in south central Arkansas. So I got to I-30 at Highway 67, and I was sitting at the Valero there. And so I sat there for about, I'd say maybe an hour, and I watched this storm move up near the Bauxite area. It was just west of Bauxite, I believe. And it just started to rotate. I looked at it on super res velocity, and I'm just like, man, that rotation is growing by the scan. I'm like, that's it. If there's going to be a tornado now, it's going to be on that. And I said to myself, well, I need to go out and get up there. So I scrambled and I left Haskell. Well, I left I-30 and 67 and started moving up through Benton. And I made my way to Little Rock. When I got to Little Rock, it started to somewhat cycle a little bit. The rotation was still there, but it wasn't as pronounced. But when I got up to Cantrell Road in West Little Rock, it just got violent. All of a sudden, the thing just blew up all out of nowhere. And I said to myself, well, I've got to get in front of it, because this storm was racing. I mean, it was picking up speed as it was going along. It was just going faster and faster. And it was getting a little bit more difficult to chase because I was finding myself behind it the whole time. So I decided that I'd go up to I-40 and just wait on it. And so I got to Maumelle. I got to the Morgan Maumelle exit on I-40, and I looked at that on radar, and I saw that debris ball. I'm like, dude, it's on the ground.
Let's stop right there, because I want to lead us up to it. So you're on I-40, Maumelle. All right, Tyler and Thomas, take me to that same point. Take me from where you guys were before to just before things really started happening.
I was actually with Angie Harover and Thomas Corby. They were with me. We were actually about 6 miles north of Lone Oak. We had sat up, got just sitting in an open field, seeing if we could see anything. And
what was your thought of being so far north? Because everything else, that was my concern with this storm, kind of like Omar, where everyone was, I thought, would be positioned further southwest.
Everybody was positioned southwest, and that it kind of concerned me. Watching Spotter Network that whole morning, just watching chasers and spotters and everybody coming in. And my concern was that there's so many people that you would get a congestion of, you basically get convoys of chasers and spotters.
Chaser convergence.
Yeah, and it would hamper anything if it actually happened. It would, you'd have people stopping, trying to watch and videotape, and I kind of had a feeling I wanted to stay close to home where I can get to anywhere that I needed to, and it kind of worked out. We were talking to y'all and ended up got a message saying, hey, can you get to Vilonia? And we took off, and we were coming up, I want to say it was 64. Yeah, I want to say it was 64, and we had gotten word over the ham that the tornado had crossed the road, and Angie was looking on the radar and said it's right up over this hill, and we stopped. We stopped the closest way. We have an escape route, and I didn't go any further till it passed, and then we went in.
So what about you, Thomas?
Well, for me, I always try to look at, storms have a very unique tapestry. They are going to form in a particular manner. One of the lessons that I took away a long time ago, I learned from Mike Francis. The Washita Mountain area, that particular portion of the state is kind of like a corridor. It funnels storms into that area. Once the storm fired up just south of Jacksonville, I knew that would provide that compression for that cell as it came up. And based on the same trend as the previous Vilonia tornado, I knew that Vilonia was going to be the place to go. So that's why I immediately targeted that area. Linked up with Johnny Holt, my team, we immediately went into action mode. We drove up to that area, and we kind of held short at El Paso and wanted to see what it was going to do. As we proceeded into the area, like I said, based on what I was seeing on radar scope and GR level 3, I knew that I was in a bad spot. So I immediately fell back into call it military training. I had to have an escape route. I knew I had a north-south option, and so I chose the north option because if it turned right, which large tornadoes can sometimes turn right, I would have been in a very bad spot. So I opted to go north, and that's what I chose to do.
All right, so Omar, now you're on I-40. This thing on the ground, I think we have confirmation of it, I guess already west of Little Rock. I mean, it came pretty quick. It hit, though it didn't hit a population center per se. Western Pulaski County is not sparsely populated. There are people out there, and with so many people, easy access to that part of the county too, relatively. I mean, you can jump on east-west highways pretty quickly. There were people there already chasing it. Describe the moment as this thing moved near where you were.
Well, like you said, it was coming out of Pulaski County. Well, it was coming out of West Pulaski County, and it was coming so fast. I was actually just gonna sit at the Morgan Maumelle exit on I-40 and watch it cross the road, but I figured that down there was because at that point it was taking more of a northerly track, and so I just figured that was going to be too far from the action. So I figured that I'd go down a little bit further to the next exit, which was the Mayflower exit, and I got to about a mile away from the Mayflower exit, and it's nearing me. And I knew it was nearing me because I was seeing power flashes, those big, huge towers that support the cell phone antennas and stuff. They were going down left and right. It was one.
And Omar, let me stop right here because I think you're bringing up an interesting point. And this was with the last Vilonia tornado as well. When I say tornado, most people in their mind describe a funnel, well defined. It's clear to see. This was not that type of a storm, and I think it's important to realize that, and that's why we had people literally drive into this thing at one point on I-40, because unless you knew that you were chasing a tornado, you would have no idea that you were about to drive into a powerful tornado. Why? I mean, what did it look like?
Lesson learned from El Reno. A lot of people, especially if they're from the Midwest, they see the prototypical blue sky surrounding supercell. We do not have that in Arkansas. In fact, Arkansas sits uniquely in Tornado Alley because you can pivot and go straight over into Dixie. Everything from Arkansas east gets muted. It's almost a panoramic of gray. This particular storm, Greg, I can tell you firsthand, there was a flash of green, it went to a gray, went to a shadow gray, and then from there the sun was just gone and it was absolutely dark. There was no definition in the cloud base. There was no definitive wall cloud. You just knew, based on what you were seeing, that you were in a bad spot. At least I did, because I was on the front side leading edge of it. And I know that even sitting on top of the ridge at El Paso, I was perplexed. I didn't hear any sirens going off in the El Paso area, but I could tell by the clouds, I could tell by the wind. I knew it was coming to that point. And again, we decided to move further north. But visually, if you were trained to chase out on the plains, you would have had a bad day because you wouldn't have realized you were about to get stepped on.
And another good point there, Thomas, and Omar, you can speak to this. Sometimes, and I think that this was the deal with the previous Vilonia tornado, we train people, tell people, look for a lowering in the cloud, here it comes, right, all that. But in this tornado, and I believe it was the last one as well, sometimes the wall cloud is so low it literally makes contact with the ground. I mean, it's the thunderstorm literally attaching itself to the ground. I mean, you don't see the classic scenarios. So Omar, you're watching this thing, I guess all you're seeing is it's getting dark ahead of you.
Right. Actually, to be quite honest, it really didn't per se get dark. It was just a big gray wall. That's the best description I could give it. It was just a big, huge gray wall that was the size of the entire sky. And as far as I could see, it was just gray. I mean, from the cloud, just all of it. It was gray. But it became a point, and it got really interesting as it moved into Mayflower, and right as it crossed the highway, it got really interesting because right before it crossed the highway, it lightened. Well, a part of it darkened up, and the rest of it stayed just that mellow gray. But that part that darkened up was the area that you could see the power flashes. With me being about 300 yards away from it, it was a portion of it, and I snapped the picture right before it crossed the highway, and it was a portion of it from all the way down to the cloud base to the ground. It looked like actual tunnels of air. It was like actual little gray tubes of air that separated each layer or each section of the tornado. And as it crossed the highway, it was like the middle section. It appeared as just like a big ball of dust, basically, and that dust just rolled right across the freeway. And that was the tornado itself. And as that dust was rolling across the freeway, it was like, imagine like a tennis ball. It's rolling across the ground. You see the front of the ball is going down. And so those downwinds was tearing up everything. I saw houses. It was this one particular house. It just blew up, and everything just went everywhere. But on the other side of that ball, you've got the portion that's going up. And that portion that's going up, as it crossed over the the side of I-40 that comes back into Little Rock, I think they would call it either southbound or eastbound, either one. As it crossed that part, it picked up this tractor trailer and it rolled it across my section of the freeway, which was going towards Conway. It rolled it and actually threw it off into the woods. And it was this one Charger that was directly in front of me. This car lifted up and just flew off. And until this day, I've not found that car. Have no idea where it went to. I don't know how many people were inside it. I just haven't seen it. And all that night, I was there, you know, rescuing people, pulling people out of rubble, and I just didn't see this car. And I know it again if I saw it, but it just lifted it up and it was gone. And it was just that one centerpiece of that one center tunnel of that tornado. That's the part that did the most damage. And it leads me to believe, I was telling my mom earlier that if there is an EF5 rating, if they do give an EF5 rating, it would come from that very center part of it, because the outer edges of it, to me, were strong EF4-like. Because, I mean, you can see the pictures, a lot of the houses, some of the houses was there, and some of them were just missing certain walls and stuff. That's EF4, you know, and you got the lesser built structures, you know, that were gone. And that's total EF5, but I believe that those areas, some of those houses were actually well built. They just, that center part of the tornado just hit them, and that's why they're gone. So I believe if there is an EF5 rating, it would come from that.
And you know, and you bring up a couple points here, because oftentimes when a tornado gets this large, it's not one vortex, it's multiple vortices around a large center of circulation, of varying intensity there. You know, I think in Oklahoma, what you described in Oklahoma City, last time I watched coverage, they call that a grinder. I mean, this tornado is literally grinding into the ground, and that's what causes a lot of this damage. So Tyler and Thomas, now tell me about your experience. How close were you to it? And then I guess you guys can go ahead and take it to the next step. Thomas and Tyler, tell me what happened after the tornado moved by, and then we'll kind of go that way with Omar.
I can agree with what Omar said, and I'd like to pose a question back to Omar. I know that when it passed just to my south, that was on Highway 5. And unfortunately for the woman there in White County, that was all they wrote. That house, I remember seeing it when I passed by it. I passed by it, and so has everybody else who's ever gone to Heber Springs on Highway 5. That is gone now. That landmark home was not a poorly constructed home. It was a very well-built house. I can say that I believe it will be an EF5 based on the fact that when I saw it, it was lit up by lightning, and as we went up further toward Romance, we were able to still catch it visually off and on. And it literally looked like a bolt. And Greg, when I say that, think about a B-17, the ball turret on a B-17. Mm-hmm. That's what it looked like. Normally when a funnel retracts, you normally just see the wall cloud. There's no protrusion below it. This looked like a physical ball. When it would pull back, the lightning would get really intense, which is atypical. But when it would drop down, the lightning would subside, which, again, is atypical. But what was different was that it literally would drop down, catch a mountaintop, catch a mountaintop, catch a mountaintop. And it was almost like watching a ball fall out of the sky. Not a complete funnel, but then when we got to 310, it actually became a full descending funnel cloud. Now I say funnel cloud because the ridges and trees prohibited us from being able to see it, you know, actually making contact. I believe it made contact somewhere because we saw power flashes. But the preliminary damage path, I think what they're going to find, and I'm not saying it's a new breed of tornado, but I agree with Omar. This was not your atypical spinning tornado. This took on the appearance of what like I said, looked to me like a bolt. You know, if you could just imagine something going this way as opposed to spinning in a more conventional manner.
Interesting observation. So Thomas, you went north to escape because you saw what was coming your way. Tyler, you went into Vilonia. Now, I saw you post something on Facebook that you're not going to put any raw video on and I respect that. I think that's important. So, you know, you don't have to. I'm not asking you to get too descriptive here, but when you went into Vilonia, what was your reaction? Because you were one of the first people there.
The biggest thing was when we first started going in, there was a little bit of debris, a little bit. Initially when we went into the first neighborhood where I've got one of my supervisors lives. And I've always told him if something goes through your town, I'll be there first. I want to check on you, make sure you're okay. I couldn't get a hold of them, ended up going in. They were fine. And then we ended up going down towards, is it 107 where it came across and actually...
Right there before Main Street.
Yeah, right there. And that's when we really started seeing the damage. It wasn't a really large swath of damage, but it was the center guardrails, the wires that are on them were just strung across the road. There was dirt piles, and I thought that a semi-truck carrying dirt had fallen over, and in all reality, it was just scraped off the ground. And there was a hillside off to the left of, or the right of us, and you could see it lit up by headlights and stuff like that. And then we went up and came back around, and it was just people in fields trying to find other people. And the reason I'm not going to put any of the video footage that I've gotten from the truck and everything else is because, one, that's not why I do it. I don't make anything off of doing this. And two, I've got a lot of friends that are in Vilonia that have lost their property, and I don't want them to look at my pictures and there's their house. That's just out of respect.
And I understand that, and you know, and that's an interesting point that you make there too, because when you talk about a tornado actually picking up the earth, you really are getting into those high categories. I mean, you know. The difference between 3 and a 4, and you can visit my Facebook page for those watching and see the difference. A 3 will have some interior walls left over. A 4, there's a rubble on the foundation. A 5, there is no rubble. All there is foundation. And in many cases, like we saw in the Alabama outbreak, the 5 will literally strip inches of topsoil, and in many cases, even remove asphalt off the roadway. There were reports of F5s going through, or EF5s going through Mississippi in that Alabama outbreak where they went through a forest, and not only are the trees gone, but so is the first 6 inches of topsoil, which to me is just incredible that you can have that kind of force with sheer wind. Okay, Omar, so you were on the southern, you were in the Mayflower part of this. Tell me about, you know, what you saw once you got to where that tornado crossed ahead of you.
Well, once the tornado crossed, because actually I thought I overshot it. When I got, because I was actually at the Mayflower exit at first, right before it crossed the freeway, and in my mind I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just overshot it. So I backed up about, I'd say maybe about 500 yards, and that's when it had crossed the freeway in front of me. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I actually didn't overshoot.
That sounds like a really close call.
Right, it was because if I didn't in my mind think that I overshot it, it would have went right over me, and I probably would have been a casualty. But that was mainly because it took a north track, and then the tornado itself somewhat went another way. Because, I mean, the storm, you can see the core going straight towards Mayflower. Then you can see this big, huge hook down there just south of it. And it was going north, but at a point, it actually started moving more northeasterly. And so that's what led me to believe that I overshot it, because it looked like it was too far south of me. And I'm thinking, okay, I just overshot it. I'm going to get overtook by the hail, and I don't want that because of my windshield, so I backed up. And that's when it crossed the freeway. But right after it crossed the freeway, I moved up. I popped it in drive, moved up, I'd say maybe just about a half a mile. And when I got there, well, when I got right up the road, I immediately, you know what chopped up trees smell like, what that charred bark smell like? It smelled just like raw trees, you know, and I knew from just experience, that that was not a good sign. When I got up there, my jaw dropped. Literally, my jaw just completely dropped. It was horrible, man. It actually looked like somebody just took one of those little mini nuclear bombs. There's like little small nuclear bombs, and just took it and just dropped it, and it detonated right over the ground. And like the shock wave from that bomb just blew everything away. That's kind of what it appeared like, because everything was just wiped out, and it was all going in the same direction of the tornado. And you know, we all know that with tornado damage, you get more damage kind of scattered out. You don't too often get damage facing a certain direction unless it's a strong tornado, because it gets thrown around by the wind. And so far, really, the only time you get damage in a straight line like that is straight line winds. And so I knew that this had to be a really strong tornado that passed through if all of the damage is facing this way. And so you knew exactly where it went to. If you was to drive through there, you could see exactly where it went to and which way it was going. But it was tractor trailers that were twisted up all in the middle of the freeway. The freeway didn't look like a freeway. It looked like a big parking lot of blown up vehicles, basically. And there were pieces of houses, pieces of buildings everywhere. I got there, it was a really strong stench of natural gas. It was gas leaking everywhere and propane. And it was this one particular, I don't know if it was a house or what it was. It was out on the lake, but it was burning completely out of control. And the stench of gas and propane out there was unbearable. We were walking around almost fainting, trying to get people out of cars and stuff. But most of the casualties out there were...
So there were other people there that were also now part of the rescue effort.
Right. It was hundreds. It was just people that were passing through on the freeway that were stopping. It was everybody, not even first responders. It was just literally every person that could walk that was in the vicinity stopping and helping. And it's just the tornado itself, the damage didn't really impact me as much as the sheer teamwork, you know, that passion to help other people, you know, in a time of need, that drive to stick together and be there for the next person. That's what really got me in the emotional aftermath, because the compassion was just, it was incredible. You know, the teamwork, I actually teamed up with a hazmat guy that was just passing through on his way home. He lived in Conway. And I teamed up with a firefighter and a doctor from Baptist Health, and we all just grouped up. It's like everybody just came together, and we rescued this couple from out of a flattened car. It's like they were in a Charger, and but this was a white Charger, but they were in a Charger, and their car got, the guy said it lifted. He just drove into it. The rain got heavy. It started hailing. And the next thing he know, the passenger side of his car lifted up, and he didn't wake up until they were lying flat on their head in the field. And they were actually in the ditch. They were in a really deep ditch in the little median that separates I-40 from the service road. They were in that median, and the car was flat. Him and his girlfriend, they were unconscious when we found them, but we brought them back too, and we pulled them out that car. But it was like, just during the rescue, it's like everybody stuck together. After we cleared all the cars that were on the freeway, after we cleared the little RV park that we was right in front of, we cleared all of that. Then we went into Mayflower, and they set up a command post at the city hall. And from there, they were just directing us to certain neighborhoods, you know, where they were finding people. And then is when it really hit me how bad it truly was. Because I got to one of the neighborhoods in Mayflower, everything was gone. You didn't know where the street was. You didn't know where the houses was. You didn't know where the grass was. Everything was just brown, dirt, and wood. That's all you saw. And it got to the point to where we were pulling bodies and stuff out of the rubble, and it was just bad. It was really bad.
Tyler, you know, let's kind of something that came up in Omar's talk here, description of this, is that people immediately started working together, and I think that, you know, I think we've seen this through just a telethon that our stations put on. Arkansans really respond. I mean, you know, I was speaking with my parents about this, and honestly, it was hard to talk to them about this. They live in Connecticut because they have no comprehension, number one, of what a tornado is, and number two, the fact that, I mean, my father literally thought that everyone that lives here was crazy. I mean, he saw the video, and he just thought to himself, my gosh, you have got to move from there. They were just traumatized. They were traumatized, and what really put that into perspective is that this happens here often. I mean, I'm not saying we don't get tornado like this, but we get, you know, I often say that Arkansas should be called the natural disaster state, because it seems like we get dealt natural disasters all the time, and yet people not only continue to live here, but have really developed a strong network, a community that is really strong. And it's times like this, Tyler, that I think, and I want to know if you saw this in Vilonia, this really comes out.
It was when we went to the first neighborhood to check on my supervisor and my people that I'd always said, I'll come to you and make sure you're okay. There was no damage. Everybody was fine. Power was out, but everybody was out of their house. It kind of looked like the concert had just let loose. I mean, everybody was out in their yards. Everybody was going house to house to check on each other. And by the time we left there, everybody was leaving that neighborhood and going to other neighborhoods. And about that point is when the streets started flooding with people trying to leave, then EMS, and it started getting really hectic. And so when we were actually driving down and going through the damage, there was just so many people out there that if there would have been more people, it would have been more of a hindrance towards finding people. Just everybody stepping on top of each other, trying to get here. But everybody came together. It was actually quite amazing.
And that's amazing to hear. So, I mean, I think this has been better already than I thought it would be. I think your experiences in this are amazing. And what I kind of want to point out here is that we often look at, and sometimes, especially with recent severe weather events, we kind of look at storm chasers as maybe being a little nuts, a little crazy, and I think there's an element of that. But I think what we're also seeing here is that oftentimes storm spotters and storm chasers especially become first responders. And that is something that sometimes they don't choose to take on, but so many times you hear these stories of chasers not having planned on. They plan on staying with a tornado or staying with a storm. That's always the plan. But you're chasing that storm, and you come across a community that was suddenly affected by it, and the plan just goes out the window. And suddenly you find yourself running out of your car, stopping, pulling over, forgetting about the storm, and suddenly concentrating on the people and helping them. And I think we all need to thank you guys, and I thank you guys for providing that service. I think it's very important that, yes, maybe there is a little of adventure in this, and there is a little bit of curiosity, and we all have that weather bug, but ultimately what you're hearing here is that a lot of these storm chasers then become first responders and become very important in the search and rescue effort. And I think a lot of communities, especially like Mayflower and Vilonia, are probably thankful that you guys were there. So I want to make sure we say that. And then I also wanted to hear from you. about what you would say to people who would ever think about storm chasing, and especially here in Arkansas. Thomas, I'm going to start with you. We're going to work our way to Tyler and Omar. Thomas, give me your thoughts.
I can say this. I have video that I took up on Highway 310 that I just haven't posted yet and probably will. I just wasn't sure if it had, I guess you call it resonance, and it directly addresses what you were talking about. When we were on 310, we crossed over the top of the hill, and blind to what we could see, and to address your point, we came headlong with a downed pine tree, and not a small one. My job was to navigate. The driver's job, you know, he's driving. We were both, I wouldn't call it mesmerized by the funnel cloud that we were seeing lit up by lightning, but that's where our attention was. We were not speeding. Had we been going at the posted speed limit, we probably would have hit the tree. But nevertheless, we were able to get over far enough to where we just clipped the side of it. We proceeded maybe 500 feet down the road. There was a large oak tree. There was no way to get around it. And like I was discussing with Al, we didn't have at that point cellular service, so we had no intel. When you don't have intel at night, it's deadly. You can't see, so our chase was over. We turned around and we went right back into clearing the road. Countless tornadoes that I've seen in Arkansas as well as Oklahoma and one time in Mississippi. I cannot speak for other chase groups. I know that with CASIC, we bring chainsaws. We always carry gloves. We always have toe straps because the road network is the first thing that is going to be damaged. It's going to be impacted, and if you can get that clear, you can get more help out. When we stopped, at the point that I went back and turned on the camera, we actually were joined by the people that lived on that street. They were coming out of their shelters. They immediately chipped in, and it was just a perfect gel. Everybody was working to clear this road. We went on further up to see what we could do, and it was just a matter of, you know, working our way back out. And everywhere along the way, everybody's like, yeah, we're fine. You know, our neighbors are fine. Everybody steps out. I can say for a fact that chasing in the Delta, I have family that live there. They are not, and let me back up. The people that live in the Delta are not in communities that we associate with, because we see our neighbors. You walk outside your door and you can tell what the person's wearing. In the Delta, your neighbor might be a mile down the road. They will physically get out and walk if they have to check on that person. It's a different network. But all across Arkansas, all across Dixie, and I think it's probably true anywhere in Tornado Alley, we do see these storms, and we do step up to help our fellow brethren out. But regarding storm chasing, I would suggest if somebody was thinking about it, take the class, be a spotter, and be a spotter for a long time, because you really need to understand that what you train on is plains chasing. We're in Arkansas, and the dynamic of what we see, the weather, as far as what it looks like, is not what you're going to see in those slides. It's like many chasers call it jungle chasing. There are groups like the Tornado Titans. They will not enter Arkansas. Reed Timmer has said it before. You got to be on your P's and Q's in Arkansas. You have to know what you're dealing with. I would not encourage somebody to just jump right into it. A lot of people who I observed that were from out of state, and some that were from inside Arkansas, I'd never seen before, never heard of them before. They were using, hate to say it, but they were using free radar apps. Those have a delay due to the lag in transmission. And these things can cause problems. If you're looking at a radar image that's 6 minutes old, that's like going down the freeway at 50 miles an hour with your eyes closed for the same amount of time. A lot changes, and especially with severe weather. You got to be on it. I was able to determine, based on years of experience, looking at radar, that wobble. I knew that my position was compromised, and I knew that I needed to move out. Had I not had a system that updates rapidly, the GR level system is a really good program, but it's not free. You know, and you really need to understand radar, the dynamics of storms, what they visually look like. And I believe that for a lot of people, they see what we do and they think, ooh, I want to do that. Or, ooh, there's fame and there's money. But for me, it's all about one thing. It's helping to save lives. It's about getting the ground truth, providing that information to you guys so you can help get that warning out there. And, you know, I can't say for everybody else here, but I know that for myself, and I believe from Tyler and Omar, and I know your point, Greg, it's about getting the word out to help save lives.
Definitely is. So, Tyler, kind of piggyback off on that. Your views on this, the term jungle chasing. I mean, Arkansas, just even the road network here, it sure gets us from point A to point B, but sometimes when you're chasing, you need a little bit more than that. And the road network here is, in chasing terms, to say the least, unreliable.
Yes.
It completely is. When you hear jungle chasing, best way to think about it is you've got two directions, that way and behind you, and on each side is usually just trees. You don't see what's coming
Unless you're in the Delta.
Yeah, I mean there's only small areas around here that you have a good line of distance that you can see and everything else.
And then the roads, I mean, you may think the road is going to go straight for the next mile, but suddenly it takes a 90 or 120 degree turn. I mean, I can imagine, I can remember so many roads, ever getting off of I-40 to take a detour somewhere where the road will just turn 90 degrees and suddenly start going in a completely different direction. I mean, that's what makes it so dangerous here.
If somebody was, let's say, chasing to go to Hot Springs and they got on 128, thinking 128 will take them straight here, you can't do the speed limit on 128 because you're going to go off the road. It's a spaghetti noodle all the way down, and the roads are just unreliable, and GPS won't tell you where you're going.
Cell phone service is spotty at best.
And cell phone service and everything else.
Important to note, most spotters that actually go out and do it, we are essentially storm chasers that are mobile. Most of us go into the area, and we go into the area during days like today where you can see. One, to see what we can see in an area. Two, what the roads are like. There are places, and I'm sure you chase in the Delta a lot too, you could drive down a road and quite literally, Greg, try to get down to, say, Stuttgart from, say, Keogh, and that highway will not be usable if it's had more than 1 inch or 2 inches of rain. Because of the pocketing on the highway, it's heavily used, and it becomes a unpassable soup. In some cases, it can actually flood. I actually, for the first time ever, on Sunday, saw places on Highway 5 up in the hills where water was literally cascading off the side of the hills and flooding out the road. I mean, we had just a tremendous amount of rain.
And that made it, that was a whole other element there, especially just north of there where that storm tracked. We have reports, I think there was water around the Heber Springs courthouse, 6-8 inches of rain estimated by radar there. Omar, your views on chasing for folks that are watching from home. What are your thoughts?
Well, to coincide what Thomas and Tyler said, basically just to sum it all up, Arkansas is not meant for storm chasing. It's a state where you just don't want to do it. I mean, the road networks is one thing, but storm chasing in itself is a whole nother world. When you talk about chasing storms, there are so many things you have to worry about. I know popular shows on TV make this sound fun. It makes storm chasing look fun, in which for 20 seconds it really is fun. For 20 seconds, storm chasing is because when you're chasing a storm, 100 miles just to reach the tornado, and you finally get a tornado, it sends a shot of adrenaline and excitement through you, but everything after that is just an emotional roller coaster because you're going to travel through a town that's been hit. And to coincide with what Greg said, my chase was done. After that tornado crossed the freeway, my chase was completely done. I knew, for one, I knew I was cut off from the storm. I knew there was no way in the world I was going to catch up with the storm, for one, and for two, I knew there was no way I was going to get to it because the road going out of Mayflower was unpassable, and I-40 was unpassable. So I knew I was done, and so that tornado completely cut me off from the storm. But at the same time, when I went through that damage path, I didn't even care about the tornado anymore. My mind was on getting people out of stuff, and that's what I was focused on. And so the role of a storm chaser don't just take on, well, I'm gonna just go attack this storm. It's also, when you're a storm chaser, you're a first responder, you're a medic, you're a mechanic. You take on a million and one different jobs, because I was the first one there. Right off my 40 when that thing passed through, I was the first one there. There was nobody else there, and people came pouring in after I got out of my car and was running. I was climbing through a ditch with 4.5 foot of water in it, trying to get to these people. And after I crossed that ditch, everybody else was, came in after me. And so then my med training kicked in, and now I'm able to save lives. The role of a storm chaser is not just to shoot video or to see the storm. It's also to save people and help in a recovery. That's what it's all about in the end to me. That's what it means to me, because that's why I got into it, is to both warn people and aid people as after they've been hit in the aftermath. And when it comes down to chasing in Arkansas is the best way to sum up chasing in Arkansas is running through a jungle with the blindfold on and hoping you don't run into a tree. That's the best way. Try going through a forest blindfolded and try not to hit a tree. That's the best way to chase. That sums up chasing here, because chasing here is like driving right into a storm, and you just got to pick your spot where the tornado is, because you're not going to see it. Chasing here almost makes you want to stay on the freeways. It makes you not want to go far from the freeway, but you can't stay on the freeway because of traffic. So what do you have left? Well, you've got these outback, middle of God's nowhere roads where, God knows what is on those roads, and you're going through the trees, and you're in the sky, and next thing you know, you're below the ground, and you're going through the middle of a mountain, and there's a tornado coming somewhere on top of you. And you have no cell service to even see where the Doppler radar to even see where the tornado is. And at best, you will get a satellite radio signal to get you through to the news over the radio. So storm chasing in Arkansas is not advised. It's only advised for people that actually know how to chase. If you want to chase storms, I tell people all the time, go to Texas, go to Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. Travel a little bit. Start out there before you try to come over here to Arkansas, because Arkansas is not a place for rookies. It's just not, And these days, now that I can't travel more, I like to spot. I know this state like the back of my hand. I know the roads out here. I know where everything is. I know how to get pretty much anywhere in Arkansas. So because of that, that's why, I have no problem with it. I met Reed in Mayflower. Me and him were rescuing people together. And, we were just standing there talking about, I was like, man, if people are insane for chasing out here, but it's incredible how many people take on the task of chasing in Arkansas. And, they all say, well, never again. I met like 15 different chasers that said, never again will I come out here.
And that tornado will definitely do it to you. If you do get to that point. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I've accidentally muted Tyler and Thomas, and I'm not sure how to unmute you guys. See if there's a mute button on your phone that you can hit. I'm not really sure how we can do that. I think we're good.
And it'll come up, and you might be their little thumbnail at the bottom, and you might be able to unmute.
There we go. How about that? There you guys. Okay. All right. I was getting some background noise. I was trying to make sure we can hear Omar. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This ran longer than I thought it would, but I thought it was an amazing discussion and a great discussion and a great first-person perspective on, what I was watching on radar all night. And then these guys, Tyler, Omar, Thomas, we depend on these guys in the Weather Center during severe weather coverage. We don't always get a clear indication of a tornado on radar like we did in Vilonia, both the Vilonia tornadoes. When this tornado moved up to Jackson County, it don't look as good on radar because the radar is farther away. So you're getting less accurate indications, and then that's when really storm chasers like these guys become very important. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for what you did during that storm. I know not only I, but a lot of folks out there really appreciate your work. And you know what? Watch us. We'll run their feeds when they have something good. We'll show you their pictures, their video afterwards. Don't go out there, do it yourself, especially not in Arkansas. It is way too dangerous. Leave it to the pros. Gentlemen, Omar Wilson, at Omar Wilson on Twitter, the Weather Hawk. You can follow him there. Tyler, you're on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
I want to say it's Tyler Sorrells 2.
I think it is. I think it's at Tyler Sorrells 2. I remember that too. Okay, that's good. And then, Thomas, what's your Twitter handle?
CASC /T/REA. And what that's short for is Central Arkansas Storm Chasers. Thomas Ray.
Central Arkansas Storm Chasers. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Really appreciate all your work. Hopefully we won't have to do this again anytime soon, but I know when storms come up, you guys will be there to help us out. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
All right.